back to KTN Prime, and thank you for staying with us. We continue our deliberations in studio. I'm joined by three legislators: John Kagushia, Member of Parliament, Mukurweini constituency; Clive Gisairo, the Member of Parliament, Kitutu Masaba constituency; and Bernard Kitur, the Member of Parliament, Nandi Hills constituency. Right before the break, we had sampled the opening statements. And Clive, at the end of the day, a couple of issues have stuck out in terms of the agenda when it comes to Linda Mwananchi. Perhaps you're heavy on rhetoric, but when it comes to the plans that you'll have for Kenyan people, if you're successful in terms of getting this leadership, what exactly will you do, and which political outfit are you using at the end of the day?
First of all, thank you. At the base of your screen, it says Linda Mwananchi question.
Yes. What
does Linda Mwananchi, how does it change the matrix of the Kenyan politics? Number one, you know, Honorable Kituria, we happen to be in the same university.
Which one?
University of Nairobi. He was doing law, I was doing Bachelor of Commerce. But today when I sit here, I get very worried listening to his reasoning. It's not the Kitur that I've always known. First of all, while he was here around 2 months ago, in your introduction about Kitur, you even referred to him as the chair of our committee.
CIOC.
Which he served as chair for only 2 sittings at most.
No.
If there were 3, the first one was the first one, the second one, there was no quorum, and the third one was confirming the minutes of the first one. You served as chair less than a month.
No, I did it for
Are you chair?
4 months.
Are you chair?
For 4 months I did,
that is
and therefore I had several meetings, so you can't speak.
That is the shortest.
Don't lie.
That is the shortest a young person whom the government claims to be believing in served as a chair. Unless you tell us they removed you because you are incapable, which I didn't believe, but now I'm
beginning. Are you saying out of the 4 months, 3 were in recess?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. He's the shortest serving chair. And at his age, that shows the government that he's serving does not even believe in the youths. So for him to come and sit here and really defend a government that does not believe in him, a man whom, when he was put in as chair, elected, we really saw hope that finally we are having a youthful chair. And now we are having him here defending a government that does not even believe in him, telling me about housing being put through parliament, which is a lie, and he knows that. It's just appalling that a lawyer that I ought to believe and run to in case of a crisis, I cannot. I'll have to run away from, because with such kind of a lawyer, I'll be imprisoned. He can't believe in himself. The parliament could not believe in him to have him as a chair. And he's here still defending those people, telling us that while working for William Ruto, you have to suspend your ability to think, independent reasoning, and just start becoming a parrot and yapping on government development that he even himself knows is not true. The housing has been broken down. What Sifuna said was simply saying, the president saying that he is eradicating slums in Funyula. He simply said there are no slums in Funyula. It was simple as that. And simply what we are saying is, if the agenda was to eradicate slums, how far are you in eradicating Mukuru? How far are you in eradicating Kibera? How far are you in eradicating Madari? Why don't we deal with the capital city where the slums are? We can see them, we drive through them. We have to stop a lot of smooth English talking, which apparently you've also adopted from the man you call boss. From what time an elected leader walks around parliament telling people that boss has told him? Your boss is the Kenyan citizen, and that's what Linda Mwananchi is saying. The moment you start saying a fellow elected person, irrespective of position, is now your boss, you lose it. You lose the script. You are going against the Constitution, which has given all of you the mandate. Yours is to legislate, represent, and oversight the same person you are calling boss. You are embarrassing the University of Nairobi School of Law.
Oh, come on.
Okay.
Oh,
Let's
come on.
not
You are
get
now
personal.
going to personal.
Back to the
I think
question,
I need
and
to
I'll give you a
respond.
chance to respond.
I think I need to respond to
I'd
that.
asked him a couple of issues when it comes to Linda Mwananchi agenda, Gisairo. At the
The
end of the
agenda
day,
is simple. Let me go there.
We'll be back.
You came for me, I come for you.
All right.
The agenda is simple. The education system in Kenya. You heard now the other day, the same president admitting that the university funding model is no longer working. He's coming with a new one, barely 3 years into the model that he brought in and saying it's perfect, it's working. The education sector is struggling. When you look at the CBE, you saw the transition to grade 10, that the entire first term of grade 10, one book was being shared by 10 students. That we owed the publishers over 70 billion. Right? We're putting more money in State House instead of the sectors that we need to put money in, including education, health. SHA has failed. So the university funding model has failed. SHA has failed. That is in the health. The housing, as shown here, is really not working. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. What we're having is a rhetoric. These are areas we will have to deal with once we get in.
How?
First of all, it's just being simple. What we're being told here is trying to create impressions. Oh, Singapore. You know, by knowing people have not gone to Singapore. Singapore is 55 kilometers long and barely 27 kilometers wide. It's barely the size of Nairobi. It does not have the demographics that Kenya has. So it's not even a good comparison, base for Kenya. Let us address our issues using local solutions, understanding what our challenges are, how best can we fix them, right? If it is health, which is the best way that can address the health sector? What is the income ability of our people? And how do we, work around that? We are putting too much money in the wrong sectors. State House today, the last financial year, with the last supplementary budget, which added them 1 billion, ended up absorbing 18 billion Kenya shillings. Whereas your university sector is having pending bills of 100 billion. You cannot reach Singapore without putting money in higher education, into research. Because if you don't research, you cannot create industries. You cannot produce. If you can't produce, you just have to be a net importer.
So you're pushing for an increment of allocations to priority areas.
Correct. And
wasn't the education budget increased in this financial year?
Correct.
You see,
It's a lie.
Let's be factual. Let's be factual. Once we say we've increased, what percentage of this increase is it matching the population increase? Education today goes by capitation, right? Are we matching the increase with the population increase? Or are we just using a figure? Oh, we've moved from 720 billion, we are now 768 billion. Oh, guys, these are great growth. But you may be increasing the amounts by 5%, is the student numbers have gone up by 30%. That is not an increase. Okay. So let's stop lying using the numbers. Let's use percentages and compare the percentages with the numbers of the population, or student population.
I mean,
okay. Kitur has
So I need to respond. Wait a minute, Kakusha. You've already spoken for some time. I want to thank you very much, Rogers. And I'm really surprised by this great friend of mine. By the way, he's a very personal great friend of mine. But I did say it earlier that it amazes me when you are a leader of a people, and then you come and sit here and loudly, proudly say that I've delivered no project, no tarmac, none of these programs that government is delivering. It doesn't matter which region you come from in our country. Some of these programs, like even the issue of the roads, you can negotiate your way, even through parliament, and be able to get a budget.
You believe in what you're saying.
And so to sit here today, and someone says, I've delivered nothing to the people of Kitur to Masaba, I am utterly surprised. Nonetheless,
firstly, nobody said nothing has been delivered. We said no ongoing project.
All right, let's give him time.
In your own words, in your own words, that's what you said, Clive. Now, coming to the aspects of the conversation, maybe also to still clarify, I want to also appreciate, he's one of those people who really congratulated me. I was for the 99%, by
And I was very happy.
my committee members. And yes, I served for 6 months thereabout.
So you
And
served
because-
for how many months?
6
4
months.
Half of that was
No, he said
recess.
4
Because we never sit
it's
for
like,
6
I've
months.
actually
Okay,
confirmed
okay.
it. I've just confirmed it
We
right
never
now.
sit for 6 months.
And I did several sittings. I can tell you without blinking an eye, I think in my time that committee had the highest number of sittings.
So why were you ejected?
They are more than meets the eye, and I don't want to get into that conversation for now. Them they know best, so I don't want to get into that discussion for now.
Okay.
But I agree. Most of them really congratulated me. Being a first member of parliament sometimes becomes a challenge.
And a youthful one.
And a youthful one for that matter. Sometimes becomes a challenge. But let me not delve onto that. That's a discussion of another day. Coming on to the issues, I'm really appalled by also my colleagues here who say that they want to, you've asked them, and actually you've cornered them, give us your agenda. And you clearly see they don't. They say that they want to come and increase the budget, for instance, for education, based on the number of students that have increased. And then again, they say you are not supposed to tax Kenyans. Where do you get the money? This government of President William Ruto has continuously increased the
Putting
funding
money in priority
towards
areas
that
is
space
not
of
increasing
education.
taxes.
All right?
Yeah.
That has happened, and they know it's doing budgeting is a very tough balancing act. Even I can tell you that most of the proposals to even increase even anything that is basic in our country was shut off. And President William Ruto said, let us then re-engineer other models that we are not going to tax people, but create so much funds that can also be able to go into these priority areas. Recently, when we talked about housing, and I want to also turn on to John Kagusha. John Kagusha is a very brilliant leader in parliament. I can tell you, every time he gets an opportunity to speak in parliament, most of us as young leaders really applaud and embrace him. And I remember even the time when we were passing this proposal of the housing, and we said this country really we need to have some decent housing. For those, for instance, we need to eradicate slums. And I want to really appreciate these programs. And this conversation came in when we were in State House. He was part of us who were in State House. And I can tell you, John Kagusha voted, in fact, with all his 2 hands up. He was one of those, if you can go into the hand side of the house, he did contribute in making sure that we passed this bill. Why? We had a great dream for our country. Up and until the aspects of tribalism through a leader whom we felt as parliament was not fit to be the deputy president of our country. When he was ejected, and he was ejected by literally all parliamentarians, including even Clive Cyril and the entire team. And now, after that, because it suits Honorable John Kagusha, MP for Mukurweini now, it suits him to be able to survive, he begins to look at every way to castigate any programs that are being implemented by government. I like the fact that he's gone down, and I told you he's a very brilliant debater. That is the reason why he's gone down to try and get some facts about it. What I appreciate is the fact that we are on a journey. This is a journey that the other presidents failed. It is only President William Ruto who has been able to take these things head on and be able to create the foundations. And we also, what I like with President William Ruto is, first of all, he engages all leaders, and when there is a challenge, he calls us and says, can we be able to readjust here and there? So on the aspects of housing, I can assure you, there be challenges, we will achieve the ultimate end. In the issue of funding of higher education, which he was not able to really clearly, give a picture of what do you really want to do about the higher education model, the changes that have happened is good going into the future, because when you are rigid, then you lose it. You must be very flexible so that if there are things that you think you didn't do it right, there's still space for you to be able to adjust.
What are the changes you're talking about?
The new model that then the president has suggested that
Which
let's
one is
readjust.
that? Which one?
Well, I'm not going
Which
to
one
do the
is it?
specifics because the fact that I can't give you all the
tertiary
details.
funding model.
Yes, the one for the university
It is
model.
the
Yes, yes.
securitization of the loans.
But at the end of the, has money been
aspect
set
of the-
aside?
Okay,
No.
Talk about even securitization that he wants to talk about.
But that money
We
has
have-
not been set aside.
Which one?
For this financial year, you said you're going to make education, you are going to fund the entire students' bodies.
Correct.
How? Because the budget just passed, we didn't have that money.
What is so? It says it's coming to parliament, isn't it? The parliament can be able to adjust that. Yeah, we do the debate that we just have to do, and we pass it through parliament. There is nothing too hard about that. Even when you're talking about the finance bill and all this, it's just a bill that has to come to parliament. We debate, and if we all agree that this is the model that we need to adopt, why not?
So what was wrong with the one that you just brought in?
Therefore, I'm not going to go into the specifics, so that is not what we actually discussed. We are talking the overarching principles of having the ability, if things are not working, then we readjust ourselves and we move forward. You have talked about SHA, and he's saying that it's not working. I have been treated with SHA. If there are challenges with SHA, those are the things now we keep fixing as we go along. But thank President William Ruto, because he was able to take this thing head on to create a universal health coverage for our nation. This is something that no president had been able to do this, saying that we have set in the foundations. If there are challenges, then we readjust as we go along and perfect it as we go into the future. So, when you know,
part of setting up
talking
SHA
about
was to ensure there is no loss
securitization,
of funds.
talking
Clive,
about,
let's give him time.
Clive, I'm cornered, Clive. That is why
Let's
I
give
keep
him
shouting
time.
all
I'll
about.
protect
Just
you,
relax.
no problem.
Look at the way John
I'm
Agusha
not
is.
in government.
You know, these are the debaters.
Proceed.
So when it comes to the issue of housing, I had someone say that probably these are the funds that needs to be securitized. You know very well the National Infrastructure Fund it came into the parliament, we passed it, and there is a policy on how it will be run. So aspects of securitization is well defined. It is not that you just go pick any money from there and you just say, okay, there's this money that we've been able to collect through taxes, then let's securitize. That is not the truth. And therefore, I would like to encourage my friends that you really need to go back and relook at yourselves. I have said again, this excitement that you're bringing in here, one is hinged on tribalism and cornering one region of our country as a basis of just weaponizing people's minds and making people feel as if they have been segregated. If you look at the government of President William Ruto, in fact, those particular regions even have the highest representation, whether it's in cabinet or even permanent secretaries or in the leadership of our country. And therefore, President William Ruto is still focused in creating a fair nation for everyone. Distributed development. I'll tell you this as I close, Keith. In my country, Rogers, in my county, between 2013 and literally up to 2022, we had a tarmac road that is a low-volume tarmac road, less than 25 kilometers. An entire county. And you go to some of these counties where some of my friends come from, because a leader came from that region, literally every village is tarmacked. So what you're seeing right now is the redistribution of development fairly by President William Ruto. If then you will say that President, by being fair to every part, whether you're talking about Northeastern, whether you're talking Mombasa, there are so many programs going on in Mombasa, whether you're talking of Kisumu, whether you're talking about Turkana, every part of our country, there is development. Therefore, you will have a big challenges, my friends. If you are not able to convince our Kenyan people on a proper agenda, if your agenda is to say, Mimi ni Sifuna, if your agenda is to talk about some mountain somewhere, my friends, you will lose it big.
And before we come to Kagushia, at the end of the day, President William Ruto will be judged on what he has delivered. So it's proper that we have appreciated the tough decisions he's made. But when it comes to this, what you commonly refer to as teething challenges, SHA, how many people are contributing vis-a-vis how many are actually benefiting from it? That's a challenge. How is the government addressing it? We saw files being handed to is it the DPP or the DCI in terms of SHA fraud? We haven't seen any progress whatsoever in cracking down those particular institutions. So are you confident enough that these teething challenges, quote unquote, are the focus of this administration as we move forward to the 2027 polls?
Rogers, I mean, definitely. The challenges will always be there, right? Even NHIF was worse. All of you agree with me that the deaths in NHIF were worse.
Yes.
The kind of fraud that was in NHIF was beyond, the roof.
And we were promised SHA won't have any fraud.
And that is the reason why we have independent institutions in our country who are now handling those matters. And I want to believe with all my heart that because President William Ruto is serious about these issues of people who want to do fraud, especially on programs that he means well for it, I can tell you, William Ruto does not take that lightly.
Actions.
Okay. Let me just say this. I'm happy that you have now come home. You now want to compare the fraud in SHA and fraud in NHIF. My friend, the fraud in NHIF was largely propagated by the end user fraud challenges. That is maybe fake hospitals, fake claims, and that kind of claims and fraud. I tell you, the fraud in SHA is propagated by the system itself. When we were starting SHA, you stole and you took away a whopping 104 billion Kenya shillings to set up the system. And you see, when we were voting for that SHA arrangement, we had been lied to, that it was going to be a system that was going to work. Little did we know that in it was a whopping 104 billion Kenya shillings that we did not vote for. That is something that was administratively administered. And that's why I stand today, not for survival, but to castigate this vote that I did, which has proved it was totally misguided. Because when we went to Naivasha for 4 days with William Ruto, he did make a very nice presentation. And by the way, we believed that some of those things would work. We believed SHA would work. We believed, but William Ruto did also not tell us that he was hiding some of the cards, a lot of cards under the table. The fraud in SHA is of monumental proportions. It cannot be compared at all with NHIF. And in fact, we don't care so much, or even what has been brought out as end-user fraud issues with the SHA really today, which now one want to compare with what was in SHA. That is really not the issue. The issue is the fraud that was meted on this program when it started. You see, today, whenever you pay, I think we are collecting about, I don't know whether it's about 9 billion per month from SHA, but a good proportion of this amount of money is actually going to pay that system as we talk. And that is why we are not able to repair hospitals. I want to prove to you that the budget that has been done is a lie. And that is why, even though you have heard that funds which are going to education have been increased, in real sense, there is no increase. Actually, it's a hoax. The budget that was done this year is 4.8 trillion Kenya shillings. The revenue that government intends to collect is 3.6 trillion Kenya shillings, hoping to borrow 1.2 trillion. But this 3.6 trillion that government is saying is going to collect this year, ask yourself, how much did government collect last year? Or the year that has just ended in July? It collected only 2.6 trillion Kenya shillings. So government hopes to somehow, miraculously, collect an extra 1 trillion Kenya shillings within this last year of campaign, then borrow 1.2 trillion so that we can make a budget of 4.8 trillion. The truth of the matter is, the money that is available for budget and for government to use is 2.6 trillion. That is the money we can feel and touch and see. And that is why when you have made a budget which is double, it means the exchequer releases will be half. So if you have made a budget of, let's say, for education that is 700 billion Kenya shillings, the budget releases or the exchequer releases will be just about half of that. And so that is why you hear that capitation for a single student in a primary school is 89 shillings. So you ask yourself, why is there such a big mismatch between 89 shillings that is being released to a child through capitation versus the more than 14,000 shillings that a child has been allocated in capitation? That is the reason why you can't release the money to students. So that budget is a lie. SHA, again, you might go to hospital, my brother, and they tell you that the money that you have paid, or rather the money that you're supposed to pay, has been catered by SHA. But does SHA refund that money to the hospital? No, it doesn't. Today, when you go to hospitals, like if you go to Mukurweini Hospital, and if you go to even Nandi Hospital, Kapsabet, a hospital that is locally available for your people, they will ordinarily not find lab services in that hospital. There will be no drugs in that hospital. There will be no radiology services. In fact, they will be lucky even to get a Panadol in most of the government hospitals. The way we are seeing this thing going, most of the patients will have to carry their own soap, their own toiletries, their own bed sheets to hospital so that they can be able to even have their own laundry done by themselves in the hospitals, because hospitals will not be able to sustain themselves in coming days. And that is part of what we want to demolish. So before you ask for even bigger agendas that these opposition and the alternative governments have to deliver, the single most and most important agenda that must be delivered is, first of all, to stop the looting, to stop the deterioration of our country, bring it to a halt first, and then we can start rising from where we are. Because the way we are going, we are losing every single shilling. Now, the president has said that he's going to be delivering a free university education to university students.
And TVETs.
Yeah, and TVETs. Me and you know and understand very well that in the last 6 months from January this year, William Ruto's government has so far released 4 different circulars to TVETs. They have released a circular that you're going to pay 105,000 Kenya shillings for I don't know what modules. They have released another one. They have released another one. Now, the 4th one is that every student will be paying 22,000 shillings, both exam and the module. And of course, once you have done that module, you can go home and you have a certificate, you can go home and practice, which has now denied students to TVETs. As you can see, students come for one module, they do it, and because they have no more money to continue, they go home. You see, all we need to do is return back the original formula that was there, where a student is guaranteed of 30,000 Kenya shillings through through scholarship, and then they also guaranteed of help. If you do that, a student is able to stay in school and you have sustainable numbers that are also predictable. Today, there is no principle of a TVET that can account for their students. None of them even is able to know how many students they'll have in the next semester. And for that reason, you're going to see them again changing this. I mean, by what President said, he's already changing from the circular that was there before. My brother, me and you know very well, this money the President is talking about was never budgeted for. Me and you also know very well that we have not even borrowed this money that we were supposed to borrow to cover this budget. And we have IMF and World Bank that will even have a big problem as borrowing much more to cover this budget. So the only thing that the President will do is to go back to this NIF, National Infrastructure Fund, that we so much vehemently opposed to. He will now go also to Kenya Sovereign Wealth Fund, which of course you know, we opposed most of the clauses because this NIF and Kenya Sovereign Wealth Fund that was recently passed, the President is looking at how he's going to securitize this. In a meeting that I attended in Washington, we were calling it the Springs IMF and World Bank meetings. We did pressure that the government of Kenya must be forced to put in the loan book, most of this money that the government is borrowing from off book. You see, the government is getting too much of these securitization funds, which you know is borrowing, really. The government is also collecting so much money through sale of government assets, and then government is also denying payments of pending bills to deserving Kenyans who supplied government. That must also be taken as a loan.
Okay.
And this is how this government is collapsing our economy. Today, as we talk, the only person who can afford a decent meal, a decent lifestyle, is if in one way or another, you are either related, connected, employed, or associated somehow by someone who knows someone in State House.
Okay, I'm having a decent life and I'm not connected.
Those are lies.
So, Kagushia,
absolute lies.
Has Clive come to...
let's talk the
absolute
truth.
lies.
If we were to look at the decent life that you're talking about, you know very well, I know maybe you're a young man and you wouldn't want
then don't say it.
Prospective
then don't
that you're not having. But the truth of the matter is,
Payslip has been raided.
I mean, today, Kenyans are undergoing serious depression. But as we talk, anyway, having said all this, we have different teams that are seated and working around the clock to develop a very, very solid manifesto that are studying our Kenyan situation as it is, so that we can develop manifestos that are going to be very solid and are going to prescribe very good way forward and solutions for this country.
And I hope they'll be implemented to the letter if you are sent to power.
Of course,
Okay.
that is why they are being done.
Okay.
Where a Kenyan voter has now reached, you will not be assuming Kenyans. You will not be treating Kenyans as second-class citizens. As a leader, and this is what this election is going to teach politicians and leaders, that once you are put in power, you must not disconnect from Kenyans. And if you make a promise, so you must keep.
Indeed. The cost of living is still an issue. What we hear from government is that they've had to think outside the box. Kenyans don't want an increment in taxes. That's why they had to think of the National Infrastructure Fund, Sovereign Welfare Fund, securitization, and all that. So at the end of the day, is there a step in the right direction? Because there are countries that have set up these funds, and they seem to have lasted the test of time. Perhaps we should be looking at better accountability of these funds rather than throwing the baby with the bathwater. Well, what's your take on it?
Corruption is the biggest problem in this country. Unless we address it, we are going nowhere. And there's no better corrupt government than the one in office. As we speak today, my good friend Kitur, you've said that William is very focused in ensuring that these things work. Maybe you need to start by knowing that all the services that were offered by NHIF and all that to NPS and TSC, all private hospitals whose invoices have been certified and approved and ready for payment, before being paid, all these practitioners at hospitals are being asked to give a discount of 20%. You can prove me wrong if I'm not speaking the truth. Those invoices are not being paid, some that were approved as early as May last year. Why? They are being taken in circles that you give a discount. You will be paid less than discount, but that does not mean the 20% does not leave their coffers. Maybe that would be a good starting point. Have all these practitioners who offered services to the National Police Service and Teacher Service Commission get paid their invoices because they have been approved, they've been cleared for payment. Because that's part of the corruption we are talking about. When you talk about the education, again, a major issue there. We are having a serious dropout rate from TVETs.
That's true.
Because of the modular. The modular turned it into 3 and therefore moving the payment from around 70,000 to 105,000. And then what HELP does is that it opens the application portal once. So if you joined at the module after the system had been opened in the previous module, you don't qualify. Therefore, you don't get any funding, right? So we are having those challenges, but of course we are trying to put a brave face out there and showing that everything is fine. No, everything is not fine. We are not able, the government is not able to send the capitation amount meant to go to the university direct. So what now they are prioritizing is sending upkeep to the students, the money that goes to the student direct, to ensure the students are silent and they keep them in school. But you're keeping them in college, which is not receiving finances to enable them teach. So yes, you're having the student in the college, in campus, but the university itself, that is why in 2023, the pending bill for all universities was around 60-something billion. As we speak at the end of this financial year that just ended, we are now at close to 100 billion. Why? The capitation meant to be sent to the university direct is not going there. So we need to talk the truth and say, let us come with formulas that work.
And we had the CS of Education admit that the student funding model is facing challenges, and that necessitated the need to change tact.
Correct.
Is
And
that
the
a
tact-
step in the right direction?
Correct. My problem is the language also being used. They're saying now, I've heard words like it will be free now. No,
yes,
it cannot be free because part of that money will be a loan. You cannot call a loan free. It's impossible to offer free education as long as higher education. It will be a loan. That is financing of this student, but it will be money this student has to pay at some point. So
Which
it
is
not
okay.
free.
So is it a silver lining?
The question is, how practical is it?
And sustainable.
How sustainable is it? You know, let's not say things because we are heading to an electioneering year. How sustainable is it whether William Ruto comes back, which is very unlikely, or Linda Mwananchi, United Opposition, their team gets into office? How sustainable is that? Let's not do things for the time that we are in office. Can we do things for posterity?
So it's not sustainable.
It is not sustainable. It cannot be sustained. These are monies being borrowed and making it more expensive for the Kenyan to live.
Kitur.
Yeah, I've had my colleagues really make their submissions quite interestingly. But of course, mainly, you see this bottle of water, it has 95% water. So they are really shouting on top here. I mean, there's this 5% that probably had a challenge. That is where they are trying to really whip the emotions of Kenyans. But sometimes I would like to take people back to where we came from. You remember the king of tribalism in our country once said, when they were taking over government.
Who are you referring to? I don't know anyone
there's
such a
king
title.
of,
Just be bold enough.
It's well
As
known.
we've been naming William.
The highest,
If there's someone,
the
just name
person
him.
who is the highest tribalist of this country, you know, the leader who was. So this particular individual was the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. And he said when they were taking office that the economy was so bad that I think there was about only 100 million,
Empty
so to
coffers.
say. You know, there were empty coffers. Even the rats themselves were running away. And it is also said, and I believe so to be true, that a former president did had a meeting with the former, leader of opposition at that time, and they went to some place and he was telling them, just wait for 6 months. This government is going to crumble. And true to the fact, things were looking grim for this country. When you talk about the exchange rate, they were at their worst in terms of the extremely erratic. All Kenyans can agree that was the situation. When you look at cost of the basic foods, up and including before the recent challenges with fuel, we had serious challenges. But President William Ruto, working very closely with all the other actors of government, including the legislature, that is parliament, we came in and we were able to process several bills that was able to be passed so that it can be able to stabilize this country. And we have been able to have a very stable economy to the extent that international independent bodies like Standard & Poor's, all of them, I was trying to look at the records here, over time, they've really been reporting positively on the trajectory where the country has been going. Whether you're talking about even the forex reserves, right now I think we have hit over 1 trillion. It's very positive in every aspect. You look at agriculture sector that was in shambles, all right? Say for the fact this year we're having a problem with rains. God has blessed us with rains the last 3 years. When you look at maize, look at sugar, all of them, there's a positive trajectory because of the involvement of the leadership of President William Ruto to make sure that space comes back up. Look at the roads that it's stalled. I told you about my own county. I may not be sure about the other counties, but what I do know is when all the roads had stalled, it is President William Ruto, through his brilliant engineering models, he's been able to have all roads in our country back on track. Look at every space. You would notice there's positivity. When you talk about education, literally, nobody was even able to craft this aspect of CBC. It is President William Samuel Ruto who has been able to steer it back on the course. The small, not really small, but the issues, the picky issues that my colleagues are trying to pick on them and try to be experts. I was even looking at Learing Kagusha, who is now becoming a finance expert. He's also a very brilliant chap, but he's trying to really give all these ideas here and there. And I may not want to get into it because those are conversations that when you go now a bit too minute, then we need to bring in the experts from the various ministries, even the Minister of Finance, that is now become an extreme expert in that space, which I think we need to get the guys who can handle that. But we are talking about the overarching you know, in every aspect and every, you know, the way the country is moving. In my view, none of these fellows, none can be able to match the seriousness, the intelligence of the President William Ruto in being able to steer this country back on the right track.
Did you say
that
steer
it
or
was.
still?
Now,
Come on, he
no,
said steer,
I'm very
and he's
clear.
on record.
You know, that is
no
the
need to
problem.
clarify.
No, I need to help him. There's no problem with them. You know, right now, all that they look at is anything negative to be able to whip emotions. But there will come a time, Rogers, where Kenyans will want, because of the seriousness of their lives and the future of our children and the posterity, we need serious leadership in our country. We don't want jokes. We don't play with our country. And therefore, we'll be looking at, come with a cogent, you know, vision of what you really want to do in our country. And finally, there's something that they talked about, the mismanagement of resources here and there. And I was trying to really look at it and say, you know, sometimes...
We said corruption, not mismanagement of
scandals.
resources.
When you look at the other governments, and I was looking at it, I was looking at, there was something called Unclosing in 2003, 2004, which was 50 billion, you know, Triton oil, there's so many country agency, May scandal. When you come to the regime of this other one, of Uhuru Kenyatta, there are also several. We're talking about, you know, the SGR, we're talking about, you know, the expressway. There are so many things that really happen. When it comes to President William Ruto, it is the stories you're hearing them. They are saying something about NHIF. You know, I'm in tech, by the way. I'm a serious entrepreneur in tech. Okay? I took a bit of time sometime when I was in Mombasa. We were having a conference for IT things, and Shah came. And I really also wanted to really understand how big is this platform that you're saying you want to do it in 10 years and all of it, you know, staggered the funds, such huge amounts. I may not want to defend that kind of money. But when you look at the scope, it is so massive that it will get to a point in the very near future that when the data has been able to be collected for every Kenyan, you can actually be able to tell when it's going to rain in this particular place, the malaria tablets will be needed here. You know, the AI will be able to pull all that. And this system is supposed to cover literally every, you know, from the private hospitals to public hospitals. In my view, it's quite a massive scope. But I do not want to go into the details of the same because I may not have the facts. But looking at it, the cost sometimes of investing in tech is so high. Bottom line, when I hear my colleagues, we still go back to the aspects of whom can we trust to steer this country with the seriousness it deserves, not the jokes that we talk about. Oh, Bernard Kitur, oh, Clive Kisairo as the agenda, or talking about tribalism as the way to drive our country. Everything you start, in fact, today I had a clip that really surprised me. Somebody was saying that, talking about snakes, and that he wants to kill all snakes and the eggs. And I'm just thinking, is this a leader that people are believing that you just want to kill other, you know, things that I do not want to mention here on the live TV. I can't even mention it. And finally, sometimes when you choose leaders, we chose even a leader that, you know, someone was talking about the Kalau effect, you know, and I looked at his first speech, you know, that appeared, and somebody saying that he wants to come to Parliament and help himself all over. You know, I can't even mention the kind of things he was talking about because of the decorum that I put in the level of my position and the house that I represent in Parliament. And therefore, the effect that he was talking about is really none. We have won the 9 by-elections as broad-based government for the MP positions.
Facts.
Only one that they won. They're like a chicken. When they get one egg, they shout all over. In the whole village, everybody. And we are quiet and we are watching them. And I want to assure you, Gagusha, don't celebrate too much, my friend. Kenyans are not fools. They will be able to gauge what is really good for them. Thank you.
Let me just give him some facts. You know, he said, you know, he has said quite a number of things. And I like the fact that he actually appreciates that he doesn't have the proper facts on those areas. But he says that Kenya was doing way worse when they took over.
Absolutely.
And now they have improved
Significantly. Correct.
I want to educate you on a few facts. In August 2022, when Kenya Kwanza government took over, the exchange rate was at 118 Kenya shillings. And then when the government took over,
160.
William Ruto shot it all the way to 160. And then brought it back to 129. It's now at 129. So when you say that you stabilized the exchange rate, you stabilized it from the destabilization
that you created.
That was temporarily and no, it was not natural. It was temporarily created by the government so that can be able to produce this kind of an effect. The price of petrol, diesel, in August 2022, you can counter-check this with your fact checker. The price of diesel was 140 shillings. Today, the price of diesel is 222. The price of petrol per liter was 159 shillings, 0.12 in Nairobi. Today, the price of petrol is 214 shillings. So, when you say that your government, the government of William Ruto, has stabilized these factors in the country, then I agree with you when you say that you don't have proper facts.
No. I may need to clarify that.
I have given you those facts so that you understand that now we are way worse from where we began at that time. And by the way, Kitur, I have not met any other person who is speaking about William Ruto with so much confidence lately. I'm surprised that.
Okay, let's stick to the issues.
Honestly speaking, that Kitur can actually, go out of his way to confidently say that William Ruto has improved the economy of the country and giving even the benchmarks, without blinking an eye, only, to look at these facts and see that, in fact, we have deteriorated further and further. I want you to check your facts, my brother, so that when you are talking, where you are not sure, just say you are not sure, so that we can, we can work with that. But, chest thumping and being so confident about what William Ruto has done, when in fact he has deteriorated the economy, is not right, because it is likely to mislead our people and Kenyans. I mean, we know for sure that this country is almost running on borrowed time. You can see, for example, like what is happening with the security apparatus, that the government has come up with a different system that is informally dealing with security matters through goons and hooded policemen, that were trained and bought for Subarus. I'm told they were given about 200 Subarus that they are using to terrorize Kenyans. And really what we are seeing in this country is totally unprecedented. We didn't think that we could get to this level. And I think it's fair to agree that systems are not working. William Ruto has completely collapsed education systems. Health systems have been brought down. Higher education systems have been brought down. And little do we know that we were to go that route. So give this country to a different team. Let us reorganize our systems. But most importantly, let us stop the deceit that is running through the national psyche today. And by the way, now, not many people actually take William Ruto very serious. So the issue of saying that who can be trusted, you cannot talk of trust and William Ruto in the same sentence under the sun, surely.
That would Clive, as we get the final comments, kindly here.
For me, having listened to my brother Kitur, he said about chief of tribalism and where the current government got the state of the economy and all that. First, I would like to remind him that the co-pilot in that flight that brought us to where he claims they got in, the co-pilot is the current pilot. So being hands-off 100% and saying, I was not part of this, is wrong. For 10 years, he was part of it. In 2017, he was the one reading the manifesto, telling us in 6 months' time, a stadium in water, in 6 months' time, a clarion call that he still reads up to now. So he cannot be hands-off and say he was not part of it. He was part of it. He was earning taxpayers' money as the deputy president of this republic. Number two, the criminal elements are steered from government itself, the goonisms. We as Linda Mwananchi were stoned on our way from Kisii to my constituency in Keroka in a place called Keumbu. Believe it or not, what you saw on video, the goons who were stoning us were running side by side with uniformed policemen. Number two, the stones were being hurled from a police station. The goons were inside a police station.
There's a police station around Keumbu Market.
Right on the road.
Oh, right, okay.
So where the stones were flying from, where you saw that lady in a red T-shirt, that is a police station. That's where even the CDF office for Nyaribari Church is. So they were hurling stones from a government institution.
Have there been arrests as you proceed?
How do police arrest themselves? Doesn't make sense. So these things, let us just face them, Kitur. You know, deep in your heart, you know the truth that things are wrong. But of course, you have to put a brave face. We understand. But you know, me and you, we talk. We have tea. We are friends. We talk about these things. We know there are problems. Let us accept it. There are problems here, and they need to be fixed. Luckily, in all these things, counter accusations of tribalism, blah, blah, blah,
facts,
you find that Linda Mwananchi and its entire brigade are not part of that. And therefore, they give that fresh breath that this nation needs. A breath whereby we cannot be accused of taking an economy down. We cannot be accused of any corruption, none of us. And if there is, let us be told. We are just saying this country needs a rebirth. And the only way is to say, if you've been part and parcel of messing this country, just step aside and let Kenya move on.
Rogers, as I said, these are very brilliant legislators. You actually picked them today. But I want to take back my friend John Kagusha back to this. I've accepted that, yes, it was around 120. But you know what happened just immediately thereafter? There was the issue of the repayment of the loan. That then they had to mop up all the available funds. And President William Ruto, in his own great wisdom, was able to navigate what I said that they had said within 6 months, our country was going to default. And those are facts every Kenyan knows. And being a farm leader, you remember even at some point, he had to cause all the government agencies to have accounts, in particular, banking institutions, to be able to navigate this very difficult path. And he was able to tip off Kenyans from all the other countries actually defaulted, but we were the ones who actually, navigated that very difficult path. And we've been able to pay off all the debts most of the debts that we were facing. So it was around that time that when you look at, it was around that time when we had the issue of, we repaid a couple of those.
It was not paid. It was
now,
exchanged.
I'm the one speaking, so I'm talking about the foreign exchange. That's what I'm talking about, that yes, after that, we've had a very stable, predictable environment for foreign exchange. When it comes to growing our economy, it is a fact that we were the 8th largest economy globally. I mean, in Africa, we are now the 6th. Equally, when you look at the global ranking, Kenya has moved several paces up to be one of the best places that you can come and invest in. When he talked about stadiums, look at what is happening in the stadiums, all these stadiums. Of course, they will want to complain and say, the pricing and all those kinds of things. None of them has actually been able to go, give a counter. But the truth of the matter is, all the stadiums that has told literally across the country are being done. Look at what is happening. When I talked about quite a number of them, the other challenges that happens is maybe the issue of contractors and those kinds of things. Right? The contractors were not able to do their job. But quite a number of them, quite a number of them, not all, but quite a number of them. And for those that have sold, I even have some I'm even a sports academy in my own constituency that have had challenges with a contractor, and therefore we are now, termination, and it takes quite a long time. What am I talking about? That President William Samoei Ruto has been able to touch every part of this economy and transforming our country, stabilizing it, making it fair for everyone, creating development across the country, leaving no one behind. And finally, I want to appreciate what President William Ruto has also been doing to assist the young people be able to get a footing. By the way, I struggled to have been able to get to this level when I was a young man, because I didn't work for so long. I really wanted to get into business.
As your final
and I got a challenge in that space. So when I see what President William Ruto has been able to do to support the young people, I would like to encourage my friend John Kagusha and my friend Clive Kisairo. My friends, you have a long way to go in crafting a proper agenda that Kenyans will be able to put their trust in. and reduce this issue of emotions and always looking at negativity as a basis of selling your candidates.
So
And besmirching the other side. The government of William Ruto is still very firm.
It's just needs.
But I'm also maybe
time is up.
just one point. I know people
Time
in
is up.
Nandi have a problem today with them calling Rigathi Gachagua a tribalist when he supported their son to become the president when he was not a
You should stop
Okay,
tribalism.
I think we'll talk about that on the periphery of this particular show, but thank you so much, gentlemen. We started with politics, we went into issues and policies, and I think that's how conversations that make the nation should be going. Asanteni sana, I see your good friends. I hope you'll be sharing a cup of tea after. John Kagushi, Asanti sana, Clive Gisairo, Bernard Kitur, all legislators in the 13th Parliament. And that's how we wrap up tonight's edition of KTN Prime. Hope you're adequately informed. Do keep it right here for informative discussions and top-notch news highlights. I'm Jesse Rogers. Have yourself a good evening. Good night.